Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to our program. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story, and well, some of you are probably going through the same kind of thing I am, as you can hear in my voice. A little congestion and all that fun stuff associated with. Well, we're going to be talking about healing today on that level as well as many others with Dr. Eric Pearl. And he is the creator, discoverer of, and the author of the Reconnection, Healing Others, Healing Yourself. Join us today.
Walk with me, talk with me. Tell me your stories. I'll do my best to understand you.
The Reconnection. It gets you to wondering if some utility company came along and disconnected you, and now we have to do it all over again. Dr. Eric Pearl, it is good to do it again with you here on the program and have you back. It's been a while.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, it has been. I don't remember how long, but it has been a while.
Several years. We had an opportunity, my wife and I, to come up to Sedona and participate in one of your weekends, and it was quite an extraordinary weekend in and of itself, and we had quite a time, and it's been some time since we've been able to reconnect with you, and I'm glad we have. Now, you are a former chiropractor who had some rather interesting experiences we want to get into. But tell us about this, the maybe even just how you came up with the concept. I shouldn't say the concept, naming it as the Reconnection. Were you or were we disconnected? Were we connected at one time? We've been disconnected, and now you are facilitating this reconnection through this healing process?
Well, yes, you could say that, and there are a number of ways to come about to how the name essentially happened. On one level, what happened to me was I was a chiropractor, and in my 12th year of practice, a few strange things happened, and the next thing I know, a lamp next to my bed turns itself on, and I feel people in my house, and I get up bravely with a knife, a can of pepper spray, and my Doberman pinscher, and go looking for them, and couldn't find anyone, and I went back into my office the next day, or next Monday rather, and 7 of my patients insisted that they felt people in the room with us too. So something was happening around that time. They could feel my hands. When I held my hands near them, my palms blistered and actually bled once, not like a stigmata, but more like you stick it with a small needle or a pin. And the next thing I know, people are getting up, having healings, getting up out of wheelchairs, and vision and hearing returning, and all sorts of things. Not everyone, but a lot of them, and enough that we knew something was happening. So the background is that a couple days before this happened, I had some unusual work done on me. I had met this unusual woman who said that she could do a work that was designed to she may have used the word reconnect. I'm not really sure. Reconnect us to the original beings that we were. The way she explained it was that the meridian lines on our bodies used to be, that are used by acupuncturists, used to be much more effective and part of a more comprehensive system than they currently are, because they used to extend off of our bodies, tie us into the grid lines that encircle the planet, encircle the globe, and then continue outward, tying us into the other stars and universes. And that at a certain point in time, we, meaning humanity, had become disconnected from this system. And when we disconnected from this, as the universe continued to evolve at its great and wondrous rate, we continued our evolution, but not at that rate. Yet we'd come to a point now where we are potentially able to reconnect into that system. So you could look at that as an aspect of what this reconnection is and how the name came about. But you see, kind of more weirdly intriguing was that after I had that work done and my lamp turned itself on and patients felt people in my office, my lamp would continue to turn itself on, or different lamps would, somewhere in the house about twice a week, and I would feel people in the house, and I would call this woman and I'd say, what's going on? And she didn't know, because no one had ever had a response to this work like this before or after, especially when the bleeding started to happen. And soon after that, about 4 months after that, for a 3-month period, my patients started losing consciousness and speaking certain verbatim phrases, even though none of them had ever, brought through or channeled a voice or spoken in a tongue or anything like that before. And these 6 verbatim phrases would, they were, the first one was, "We are here to tell you to continue doing what you were doing." The second one is, "What you were doing is bringing light and information onto the planet." The third and the fourth were, "What you were doing is reconnecting strands. What you were doing is reconnecting strings." Now, we can talk about what these mean in a little bit, but to bring this back to answer your original question, as these healings started occurring, people would say, what did you do? And I'd say, nothing, and don't tell anyone, which, of course, went over about as big as Nancy Reagan saying no to drugs. And pretty much soon everyone started coming in and going, I'll have what she had. And then people started saying, teach this. And I said, well, I don't think that's really quite plausible, since no one left me an instruction manual. How the heck do you teach this? All I'm doing is waving my hands in the air, looking like an idiot, and people are having healings. How do you teach that? But more and more of my patients would call me after their sessions and say, well, when I got home, I walked into my house and my lamp or television or stereo turned itself on, so I turned it off and turned itself back on again. So I left it on, and 10 minutes later it turned itself off, and 10 minutes later it turned itself on. And I felt sensations in my hands, and I held my hands by someone in my family, and suddenly my uncle could speak again after the stroke, and my grandfather regained his ability to walk. And all of a sudden we're recognizing that once you interact with this, you begin to access this new level of healing, and we can talk about why we and the researchers all say it's new, because it takes us beyond energy healing or any energy healing technique we've ever heard of, old or even the most recent books. But what seemed to happen is, as we realize that once you interact with it, you can access it, I agreed to maybe present this to a few small groups and give them the possibility of feeling it, learning how to utilize it. And we saw that you could do that, and everyone wanted to name it. And I said, you know what? You can't name this, because as soon as you give it a name, you say this is what it is, and simultaneously you're saying this is what it isn't. And the one thing we can be absolutely certain of is that we do not know what this isn't. So I said, let's not call it anything. But human nature in many of these people just couldn't stand it, and they had to start giving it names. And so in one part of the country they're calling it Eric Pearl technique, and in another part they're calling it Pearl high frequency, and in another part they're calling it something else. And So finally I said, well, I've got to give it a name, and I've got to do it quickly before my next group that I teach. And I couldn't think of the right name, so I went, well, I'll temporarily give it a name, and maybe the answer's in those phrases. And I saw that it said, what you're doing is reconnecting strings, what you're doing is reconnecting strands. So I'll call it the Reconnection or Reconnective Healing just for now until I've got time to think of a new name. And as soon as we use that name, emails and phone calls and everything started coming in from people I had never heard of going, I heard that name and I suddenly knew that this was it. And so that's a very long and comprehensive answer to your question of why do we call it this.
And it is called The Reconnection. That's also the title of the book. My guest is Dr. Eric Pearl, and I'm Richard Dugan, and you're listening to Tell Me Your Story. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and continue talking with Dr. Eric Pearl here on Tell Me Your Story. We want you to stay right where you are. This is Tell Me Your Story. Welcome back to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan. My guest today is Dr. Eric Pearl, and he is the author of The Reconnection. And I would have to say, Eric, that you were sort of given this gift. This wasn't something that you sought after. You, as you said, you went to this particular woman, and she gave you a healing or a treatment, what have you, and the next thing you knew, all of these incredibly interesting and to some of us strange things started happening, and then the next thing you know, the patients that you were seeing were starting to experience some rather interesting results as well, and it's just been progressing from there.
Yeah, I mean, I would call the woman, when my hand started to bleed and the lights turning off and on and the people losing consciousness and speaking, and I'd say, what's happening? And finally she said, well, you're on your own, kiddo, which meant she had no idea. And it seems, after with further communication, that apparently the work that she had brought in, which at that time was called an axiotonal alignment, it was as if she'd brought in, or she had learned to do that work, and they had taught other people that work. It was as if she had created a key to a door or a lock. And when they did it with other people, or taught other people how to do it, it was like making duplicates of a key and saying to everyone, keep using this key and trying all the doors and all the locks you can. One is supposed to open, and apparently I was that door. I wasn't the gift. I'm just the door.
Mm-hmm.
If a door opens up and Oprah Winfrey walks in, no one's going to turn around and go, gee, what a great door.
Well, this is true.
But right now, I mean,
mm-hmm.
the way this is so dramatically. If you go on to, for convenience, the website is also thereconnection.com. If
mm-hmm.
you go on, you can download audios, interviews with some of the most prominent researchers today in quantum physics and other authors with William Tiller and Gary Schwartz and Lynn McTaggart and other people talking about just what seems to make this different than any form of energy healing we've ever known. And it's so recognizably, instantly different that not only are researchers who normally wouldn't even look at something like this interested, and not only am I, speaking in front of hospitals and universities internationally, but the book, The Reconnection, has gone into, I believe it's 27th language so far, and I'm on the road about 45 weeks a year. I just got back maybe 6 or 7 days ago after being away for months, finishing up in Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
Well, that was one of the reasons why we were unable to get you until after the first of the year, and now I understand you're constantly traveling about. Now, you were a chiropractor.
Yeah, I still have my license.
You still have your license, but you don't necessarily, you're not the practitioner that you were when you first started out. Give us a little bit more of a history of where Eric Pearl comes from, and does it shed any light for you in any way, shape, or form as to maybe the whys, or does it even matter why you were given this gift?
There's a reason for everything, and everything makes perfect sense once you can stand in a position of optimal perspective to be able to see things. And for many of us, that fullest position may very well be once we transition the body, because clearly while we're here, we're not meant to fully understand everything, or our lessons would be learned.
Now, the ultimate of hindsight.
Striving, yes, really. The Monday morning football, but I will tell you that some very interesting aspects came about from my becoming a chiropractor, because you see, chiropractic is something that's very interesting. Now, this work is completely a hands-off work, this healing. And chiropractic, as we know, is a hands-on work. But what a lot of us don't realize is that maybe only about 30 to 35% of chiropractors at most know what chiropractic is. One good way to find out whether you go into a chiropractor who knows what chiropractic is to look at the way they advertise. And if there's pain listed anywhere in their advertisement, they're part of the 60-65% who don't know in most cases. Chiropractic originally had nothing to do with back pain. The first chiropractic patient was deaf. Harvey Lillard, this guy who lost his hearing, and D.D. Palmer, the founder of chiropractic, noticed that this deaf guy had a bump in his neck and clicked his neck back into position, and suddenly the guy regained his hearing. So Palmer goes, must be a cure for deafness, and puts out a call all over the country, cure for deafness. The deafies are coming in on covered wagons, north, south, east, west, all over North America, and getting their necks and their backs popped, and some of them are regaining their hearing, and some of them are losing their hearing, But meanwhile, the process is discovered that it's about removing an interference between the brain and body communication and allowing the brain to come back into balance. It's not about diagnosing, and it's not about a specific problem, and it wasn't a cure specifically for deafness. What it was rebalancing the body and allowing the body to heal itself, and the power that made the body to heal the body in whatever form that happened. So, frighteningly enough for medicine at the time, many people were getting well without paying for medical doctor visits, without paying for pharmacy visits, without going back to their MD when they had an adverse response from the pharmaceuticals, and without going back to buy new pharmaceuticals. And suddenly, the second and third largest trade unions in the United States, the American Medical Association, the American Pharmaceutical Association, weren't getting as many trips to Bermuda. So they tried to label chiropractic as a cult and as a religion because it just worked naturally with the intelligence of the universe, whatever intelligence it is that causes trees to grow up and tree roots to grow down and children to be born with two eyes and one nose, and call it God or call it love or call it universe. So, medicine and pharmaceuticals, tried to squash it, but of course they couldn't do it. And what happened is, along the ways in fighting that, chiropractors decided that they wanted to become, a large number of them, more like medical doctors. So they began to diagnose and do all the things that took them away from the purity of the practice and relate themselves to pain to become, quote-unquote, accepted. And so a lot of chiropractors in the chiropractic schools lost the philosophy and the understanding of what this was. And the school, when I went to chiropractic school, I knew what chiropractic was when I started, but the school beat it out of us trying to make it into pseudo-medicine. So when I regained my understanding of it, we regained the consciousness of the philosophy of healing with the universe. Mm-hmm. Now, the funny thing is, as soon as I got that back again, and that was somewhere in my 9th year of practice, within 3 years, these healings started, and it was by my ability to have understood, to have regained the consciousness of the principles and philosophies of healing of the universe that allowed me to recognize how this new level of healing was functioning, and it became a great asset in me being able to teach it to others, because it's not just about moving your hands in one direction or another, but it's truly the consciousness with which we are present with another individual that allows us to attain that level of light that allows for healing beyond just energy healing techniques such as Reiki, Jurei, Jin, Qigong, Mahjong, Beijing, EFG, XYZ, 1, 2, 3, and it's all about me.
Well, now, you're saying then that the reconnection is more than just, shall we, I'll put it this way euphemistically, more than just standing there and being the conduit for the energy.
It is.
You are now being asked, if you will, and instructed to being consciously with the individual that you're there with.
You're a catalyst. Beyond a conduit, you become a catalyst. What we've had up until now on the planet, see, what the researchers started saying to me when they began to look at this, oh my God, this doesn't work like energy healing at all. It seems to turn the rules upside down and inside out. For instance, energy we know gets weaker with distance. Now, before some of the listeners immediately respond with with an automatic, that's not true, you have to understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying it gets weaker between here and Wichita City. I'm saying energy, if you start an inch away from an object and you go to 10 inches or 3 feet, becomes weaker. This is a known fact. On the quantum field, they've discovered situations where the energy intensity can stay the same, but never, ever before Reconnective Healing have they seen it actually increase. The intensity of this will increase. In other words, there are a lot of things that change with Reconnective Healing, and what they said is it's here for the very first time. And I said, how can you say it's here for the very first time? They said, well, see, it's old and it's new. They explain it's old because it's of the universe, but it's new here on the planet for the first time. And I said, that doesn't make sense. How can that make sense? They said, you really have to understand just two basic concepts in quantum physics. The first concept, of course, is although we were all raised being told that we are three-dimensional beings, Einstein had been explaining to us since the 1950s that we're four-dimensional, and science formally accepted this in the year 2000. The three dimensions we were all raised with are height, width, and depth. The fourth dimension, many of us know today, is time. So we are existing in this four-dimensional playground, which in quantum physics they describe it as a bubble, this four-dimensional bubble or playground in this huge multidimensional universe. So if you want to use a visual, think of rapidly boiling water and all the different bubbles in the water, and we are contained within one of those bubbles, and the wall of the bubble, the cell of the bubble, is comprised of height, width, depth, and time. And so we have a given capacity to our bubble, and our capacity has filled, it's maxed with energy. Everything that we've had here up until now has been energy, including the healings. Whether we call it something else or not, it has been energy healing. Now, here comes concept number 2. Time is moving faster. Of course, time moving faster, many of us have heard that, not meaning when you get older the summers come more quickly, but there's an actual change in time. But it's not faster the way we think of faster, meaning beginning, middle, or end, because that's a linear concept. It's actually faster, moving in all directions at once, as if you picture a central point and suddenly time's moving faster, 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 faster in all directions at once. It's actually expanding. So here's the concept. We've been existing in our little four-dimensional playground bubble in this huge multidimensional universe, and it has been filled, reached its capacity, and its capacity has been filled with energy. But suddenly, at least one aspect, the time aspect of our bubble, is expanding, which means our entire playground bubble here is expanding, which means our capacity has expanded, and suddenly we're able to receive more beyond energy into a new spectrum of energy, light, and information, which brings healing to an entirely new level. Fascinatingly enough, after being told this by so many of the researchers, I went back and looked at those 6 phrases we talked about, and I gave you the first 4 earlier in the interview. Look at the first 2 phrases. The first one says, "We are here to tell you to continue doing what you were doing." Now, I actually had one person send me an email, and it said, "See, that means you were supposed to stay a chiropractor." No, that's not what it means. Continue does not mean stand still. You continue forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's a continuation. It is a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
What was the second phrase? What you were doing is bringing light and information onto the planet. Now, we know, for instance, that the qualities of the photon are energy, light, and information. Why didn't that second phrase, why didn't that phrase come in, what you're doing is bringing energy, light, and information onto the planet? Because the energy was already here. In other words, the continuum is a continuum of energy, light, and information, the energy already being here. It's an entirely new level of healing, and the same information is being brought forth from all sorts of different directions, be it mainstream science, quantum physics, or be it from some level of intelligence that I don't even fully know how to explain what it is, coming from another part of the universe, something that's present that sees us and interacts with us. But there is a new level of healing on the planet. And the funny thing is, it is set up in a way of, I don't want to say a deception, but a challenge for us to be able to see, because it is so grand that it is the first level of healing that, A, allows us to completely transcend any form of requiring or utilizing a healing technique, and B, requires that in order to access this level, we must release and transcend our technique. Think of techniques like training wheels on a bicycle. You have a small child on a tall bicycle, and, you know, that bicycle could fall and that child could get hurt. So we've come up with training wheels. Training wheels are a wonderfully important gift and part of the learning process, because it allows that child to gently, you know, go a little to the left and a little to the right and tip back and forth without getting injured, and begin to discover his or her own sense of balance.
Mm-hmm.
But if that child is left on their own without an adult to come along and say, now it's time to remove the training wheels, the initial thought process will be, I'm not riding the bike perfectly yet, but I'm not getting hurt as much. The training wheels are helping. Maybe I should get a second set. So I'll get the 24-karat gold set of training wheels. Then I'll get the training wheels that tell me when they're tipping left and right, because they make beeping sounds, or the ones that shoot, red light beams so I can see what I'm tipping. And pretty soon that child might master riding a bicycle with 24 sets of training wheels, but he or she will never master the bicycle until the training wheels come off.
Right.
We can all see that clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Where you see energy healing and energy healing techniques specifically are like training wheels, a valuable way to begin to experience healing. The problem is we don't always have the adult around with the bigger picture. So what happens is we learn a healing technique, and it brings us closer to healing. Maybe, for instance, a technique could be, you're at point A and you want to get to point B, so the technique is step halfway, and so you do, and step halfway again, and step halfway again. And the reality is we get closer to our goal with each step.
But we never really get there.
Because we're only going to step halfway.
That's
exactly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if we don't see that reality, what happens is we look for a second set of training wheels or second technique. We say, all right, step halfway and draw a Japanese symbol in the air. Step halfway, draw a Japanese symbol in the air, turn in a clockwise circle. We add technique and technique and technique, and we become masters and master teachers and grandmasters. And what happens is pretty soon we end up riding our bicycle with 24 sets of training wheels, and we become masters at the techniques, but we never master healing, because as any true healer will tell you, or true master, I should say, will tell you, that the gift of the healing technique comes in its transcendence. That's the secret. You see, teachers and masters are not necessarily one and the same. Mm-hmm. You allow yourself to learn in the presence of a master. Master doesn't necessarily teach. The teacher teaches. The teacher says, come back and learn more. But the master says, go forward, because in the silence of your own mind lies your access to mastery. The teacher is good at retaining the students to come back again, come back again, come back again, and by the way, write me a new check. My husband will be thrilled to deposit in the bank. And the master says, go forward. We need to create more room because there will always be the new student as long as there is truth to be taught.
It reminds me of the analogy of the the ladder that we all are climbing, and then there is always someone above us as well as someone below us. And the one above us is helping us come up, and in turn, we look back and we help that one below us to rise as well. Again, making more room at the bottom for people to climb on and work their way up.
Exactly, but you know what else? The one below us is also helping us to rise.
Yes, that is true. That is true. You're listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan. My guest is Dr. Eric Pearl. And the book, The Reconnection, the website, thereconnection.com, and all of this information available there as well. Healing others, healing yourself. Now, it's interesting because when I read that subtitle, I'm thinking, it should read, healing others, healing ourselves. And I'm thinking, no, because you're directing this at me, the individual who picks up the book.
The book is called The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it's about. Now, we want to get into a little bit more about the aspects of healing. We've gone through the modalities that you've described as far as, and again, I wish no disrespect, as I know you wish no disrespect, on all of the various modalities that are out there. Because again, they're those places on the ladder that we've climbed through.
Training wheels are important.
Training wheels, right,
Otherwise,
exactly.
we have a lot of bruised children.
Yes. We're going to take another quick break. I'm Richard Dugan. Stay with us, won't you please, here on Tell Me Your Story. Tell Me Your Story is the name of the program. I'm Richard Dugan. I thank you for joining us. And we are talking with Dr. Eric Pearl. We're talking about the reconnection as we're speeding quickly through the month of January and the year 2008. And before you know it, Eric, it's going to be over, and we'll be going into 9 and 10 and so on and so forth. And
12.
And 12. I know. I'm working on an interview right now dealing with 2012, trying to talk to somebody regarding the Mayan calendar, among other things, because when I think that it was after my. Matter of fact, I know it was after my stint as an operations manager for a religious radio station for 15 years that I remember in the late 80s, the discussions were fast and furious about the end of the world and the second coming and so forth, which happened 2 consecutive years in a row, by the way, and were wrong. And the gentleman has never been heard from since, and maybe he was the only one, and we're all doomed. Be that as it may.
Wait, was that the Y2K thing?
No, this was before. This was 87 and 88.
Yes, but 87 did have the harmonic convergence.
Yes, it did.
Very well may be the beginning of this time shift that we're in right now. That's leading us into the transition that we'll make in 2012, which won't be the end of the world, but may very well be the end of the world as we know it today.
So you're quoting eloquently REM, are you?
REM?
Which was a line I was going to use.
REM, the musical group?
Yes, they are.
What do they say?
Pardon me.
I know REM is, but I don't know what they say.
It's the end of the world as we know it is the line in the song, and they go through a series of listing of all of these various events. Y2K and da-da-da and so on and so on and so on, and it is the end of the world. As a matter of fact, every you can take segments of your life and you can look back at a period of 5 or 6 or 10 years, and you go back in your mind and you say, you know what, I can't go back there. It's gone. It's done. So the end of my world as I knew it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it's gone. So it does change. It's not that the world is destroyed, it's that we're constantly transitioning. In this world, we're just constantly transitioning. Now, you made an interesting comment as we were talking earlier about this aspect of having all of I made the comment about 2020, the ultimate hindsight after transitioning from this dimension, if you will, this life experience. And yet there are those who say that we don't have to wait that long. I mean, we don't have to...
The 2012 you're speaking about.
No, well, we don't even have to wait till then. We could actually get that information, get that 2020 hindsight before we have to use that phrase, and say, you know what, we can do this now. And
are you speaking of 2020 or 2012?
I'm not speaking of years at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm speaking.
I just got confused because you used 2020 a couple of times. I wanted to know if you were speaking of something I hadn't heard of.
No, and I may be speaking of something I haven't even heard of yet, and I may have to investigate it. But it's one of those things that we want to know now. We want to know the whys and the wherefores, and a lot of times we don't accept that it just works. Do you have within yourself? Did you have this absolute need to know why attitude when this started happening? And you got past it. Is it because you found out why, or because you finally realized it didn't matter?
No. Actually, it's because I found out that I just simply won't know until I know.
Okay, there you go.
So there was just, it got to, what happened was, I started looking. I started going everywhere for answers. And people started coming to me thinking that they needed to offer me answers, and I would meet all these fascinating people, and they'd all say, "Oh yes, they're doing the same thing I am, and here are the insights." And I found that a lot of people were doing some very fascinating things with healings, but none of them were doing this. Of course, that only lasted for a given amount of time, because once people began to interact with this, they were all able to do it, and took everyone beyond whatever level of healing they had been doing up to this new level, because what everyone had been doing, what we had access to, was energy, and now we have a level of energy, light, and information. So I listened, but I kept looking for answers, and at a certain point in time I realized I would simply never get them until they were given to me, whether still in the body or not. And the funny thing is, I'm such a type A personality that it used to be that, you didn't escape a room with me until you agreed with what I was saying, or at least were a good enough actor to make me think that you did. And here's the one thing that's so important and influential, not only in my life, but we've trained over 35,000 practitioners, and who are practicing in like over 60 countries so far. It's so huge, and it's the one thing that I can't prove, and something happened with a click that it doesn't matter to me that I can't prove it, because the exploration, the questioning of it is the gift. For instance, we're talking about 1987 and 2012, and there seems to be a shift in time that may well have started around 1987 and that harmonic convergence. And many people are speaking of 2012 and will the world change? And no, but it's probably a pivotal point in our evolution, potentially into more, fifth dimensional or multidimensional human beings. I don't think we're going to go to sleep on December 31st, 2011, and wake up in the morning 2012 and suddenly be invisible. But as time goes past that, I think we'll be able to look back and recognize that was a huge period of change in our consciousness, and therefore with what we were and who we were able to interact with. You see, I don't, Richard, really like the word healing. I don't like the word healing the way it's used for this, because it makes us think that there's something we have to get better from, like to be able to walk again or regain the use of this, that we're always less than and striving to get to a certain point. Healing, I believe, is our evolution. And you see, the phrase is, what you're doing is reconnecting strings, and what you're doing is reconnecting strands. I knew from a large part of the story that we didn't go into, we won't have time to in this interview, but I knew that when that phrase came in, what you're doing is reconnecting strands, I knew and know, without a doubt, that it had to do with DNA. I thought strings meant the same thing, stringy, strandy, similar sounding words, similar visuals. it was years later that I found out that strings were simultaneous planes of existence, at least on one level, and that what we're doing is connecting with a more comprehensive existence in the world. Because let's face it, I mean, there was a 3-month period when I held my hands by my patients and they lost consciousness and channeled in these 6 phrases. So someone, somewhere, some intelligence was able to see or be aware of us that we weren't aware of at the time, but they existed. They clearly exist. So is it possible then that if strands are DNA and strings are simultaneous planes of existence, you know, there's so many things we can learn. There's a wonderful book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart, and she talks about a lot of the quantum physics. She's translated into English, heavily footnoted for the left brain. And one of the things we understand is that our brains don't work the way we were taught. It's not that, you know, memory is located here and speech is located there and learning is located there. These things are universal throughout the brain. They're multilocational, and we also access information from the field of which we exist, and we're all blips in this field. We're a little denser where we're human, we're a little lighter where we're in between, we're denser again to the next person, but we're part of this field, and we access our information from it. It's just like our computer. If you have a computer, which most of us do, we know that we put some software into the computer, we get information from the software, and we get to access information from that internet thing out there somewhere. And when we upgrade our software program, we get better information from the computer and better access to from that internet field out there somewhere. Our brains work the same way. So what if our brains are our hardware? And what if our DNA is our software? And what if what we are doing truly is reconnecting our strands, our DNA, restructuring our software? Then we suddenly get better access from our physical brains and a more multidimensional interaction with that field out there somewhere. In other words, is this work, and I truly, insane as this might sound, believe that it is, restructuring our DNA, is it part of our next level of human evolution in becoming more multidimensional beings leading up to this 2012 transition? I believe that this has shown up on Earth, Reconnective Healing, in the form of physical healings because it attracts everyone.
Yeah.
But it's only the attraction. It's not the true gift. It's just the glitter. The gift is that we are restructuring and evolving to the next level as human beings. I just don't believe that as many people would have shown up if we held up a shingle that said, "Come get your DNA reconnected here."
Well, I find it interesting that we are, as humans, we are attracted by little bright, shiny things that flutter in the wind, and we'll come running. It just astounds me as I drive up and down the roadways where the car dealers are, and they have these giant inflated gorillas and snowmen and the flags and balloons, and thinking, and that has to do with getting a machine that'll get me from point A to point B. What? Nothing. Other than to get me in there to buy one. And sadly, that's what gets us in there, is the attraction.
Well, and you'll notice the similarity in spelling of the words lame and LeMay.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is unfortunate, and at the same time, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because the attraction is getting people in to start taking a look at these things. And I have to say that having gone through this past week as we are talking here of this, I've been told it's the influenza, it's whatever it is that they've called it, and that I should have maybe gotten one of those, what they call flu shots. Haven't had a flu shot in over 30 years, folks. Won't,
I don't do that
and
either.
will not have one. And the reason is because I know, as bad as I felt for 3 days, I would rather feel that bad for 3 days and come out the other side with a more powerful immune system, a stronger body, Now, there will those who will argue in regards to that wonderful little inoculation and say, oh, but it will do this and it will do that. No, my body has been designed to combat these things if I will but keep it fortified, if I do the right things. Now, I will openly admit that I don't, who does always do the right things for their bodies? We don't. We're human. And you know, we'll eat this over here and we'll drink that over there every once in a while. But for the most part, yes. I eat well, organic eggs, I live up above the pollution line.
Organic olives for your martinis.
Yeah, that would be nice too. But it's one of those things where you have to start the process. And so I begin wondering, as you've described here, this issue of dealing with the DNA in regards to healing, and I have to ask myself that question, staying away from those outer trappings or chemicals, whatever you want to call them, and allowing the physical body to do what it was designed to do, and over the course of time doing the best that you can for it in giving it what it needs to perform the tasks it was designed to do. Just to me, that lends credence to someone such as yourself, who, and I don't know what your lifestyle is like. I don't know whether you go to McDonald's every third Tuesday or every day.
First of all, I want you to know I'm a rabid vegetarian. I eat my vegetables in a very compact form called cows.
Mm-hmm.
I really tend to appreciate them when they're in those little round things. What do you call them, on the pizzas? And yes, and sometimes I have to decide whether I want a martini or whether I want a margarita before I have a bottle of red wine with dinner. I've got a sense of humor that's,
Mm-hmm.
a little less than spiritual, and I truly enjoy it.
And yet at the same time,
we're human beings.
Exactly.
We're here to experience life, you know. We're here to experience life. And by the way, and we might as well pay attention to the way our body is designed.
Mm-hmm.
And our body is designed with our intestinal tract tells us that we're supposed to eat a 2/3 carnivorous diet, and our teeth tell us the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
anything else is a twisting of the data. So it doesn't mean you have to live one way or another. Many of us have changed our diets 2, 3, and 4 times. Many of us have changed our religions. Which time were we right? Well, each time if we ask.
Yeah.
So the fact is, we do all these things, and then we think that we are more worthy
Mm-hmm.
of, the spiritual gift and becoming healers, and we entirely miss the point that we are worthy already by virtue of being born, and everything we do along the way are simply the colors we choose to bring to the canvas. And some of us just, like certain sets of colors, and some of us prefer others.
Yeah. And one of the things that we do with this program in providing new paradigms for a new world, the new world's coming, and we are a part of that process. We are a part of creating something, a new vision, and everybody on the planet has a vision for their world, their little microcosmic aspect thereof. But it all plays in the macrocosmic aspect to the big picture. And we want to become more conscious of that creation. And we're beginning to realize that, Eric. I think we're beginning to realize.
Of course we are. We're becoming more conscious, and consciousness is light. And light is not just an airy-fairy concept, but as Fritz Popp from Germany and others have discovered and demonstrated in the laboratories, we actually are light. You can take the human cell and measure the DNA in each cell emits a certain level of light. It's specific to human beings, different from dogs and cats and fish and birds. And when our health is going down, our light is actually dimming. And when our health is coming up, our light is rising up again. And this light is how our bodies communicate. Our bodies don't heal through chemicals as we were taught.
Mm-hmm.
Hear that again. Our bodies don't heal through chemicals as we were taught. Our body heals through frequency, vibration, resonance, information, and it's communicated through light. The chemical model was this huge mistake which had all these flaws which we tried to ignore, such as how can you do something at one part of the body and have it have an instantaneous effect at the other? The chemical model couldn't explain that. It's the light within our body that does that. And light, as we allows instantaneous communication, and the vibration of light is so high that things denser than light have nothing to hold on to, so they tend to fall away, which includes most health challenges. William Tiller and Albert Einstein, known for the Tiller-Einstein model of negative entropy, speak about light because we know that entropy and breakdown increases with speed and velocity up to the speed of light. But once we get past the speed of light, and I think many people know today that we've discovered speeds more than 600 times the speed of light currently, once we get to the speed of light and beyond, we go from entropy into negative entropy, which means degeneration into regeneration, disorganization into organization, which means we move into a level of healing. And healing is simply about remembering who we are. When we fall away from perfect health, it is simply representative of us having temporarily forgotten who we are, temporarily forgotten that we are an expression of Source and that we are light. And we don't have to do anything but remind ourselves. We don't have to stare at light bulbs or the sun. We don't have to dance in clockwise circles on a full moon. We just simply need to remind ourselves, take a moment, and remember that we are light. And that memory brings us back to who we are because we want to be there naturally, and we vibrate at that level of light. And when we do, nothing heavier or denser than the light has anything to hold on to, including most health challenges, and therefore, if appropriate, they simply fall away. So if this explains how we maintain our health within, how can we become a facilitator of healing for another person? And it's easy because it has to do with this field that we are a part of. We simply share a space with another person in this field. We don't even need to touch them. We can hold our hands near them and feel, or we can have them in our minds and our consciousness and allow ourselves to feel. And we begin to vibrate. And as we recognize and feel this vibration, it reminds us of who we are. It's a joy. It's a bliss. It's a memory. And somewhere inside of us, we communicate through that field, and that other person gets a reminder, and they say, hey, I remember this. This is me vibrating healthy. I think I'll do it again. And they begin to vibrate at that level, and their health challenges, if appropriate on their life path, fall away. And that's what healing is. And Richard, anything more complicated than that is designed to sell you something. So look before you reach into your pocket for the next technique or protective amulet or flower drops or anything else, because they are all ways, pretty or otherwise, disguised for us to take who we are, our own essence, and vest them in objects and rituals.
And let me let our listeners know they can go to thereconnection.com and get further information and even order a copy of the book. And we certainly would encourage you to do so. You can also go to richarddugan.com. When this interview is completed, it'll be available for your listening. If you want to share it with others as well, that's richarddugan.com. Go to the radio shows page, and it will be there. And you can scroll down and actually listen to any of the interviews that we've had on this program. And we ask you, Eric, once again to just give us a very quick, well, you're not into sound bites, so I'm not even going to go there.
Try it.
But what
I can do it if
30
you try.
seconds. I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
To what?
To just kind of wrap some things up as regarding the reconnection.
You know, it's simply this. There's a new level of healing, one that has not been attained here or accessible here before. And if we allow ourselves to get past our egos of judgment and recognize that everything we've had up until now has been wonderful, and there's something more, we can simply access it, because our goal is about progression. It's not about falling so much in love with a step that we have to make one right and the other wrong, but it's about allowing it to be a step and stepping up to the next level.
Eric Pearl has been my guest, and Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Stay on the line. We'll talk to you right after the program is over, and I want to thank you for joining us. Join us next Saturday here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and I thank you very much for joining us, and have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful week.